blog. Anyway, the Women's Program Committee had asked if I would come and do a workshop, and I said yes. And then she said, well, what do you want to call it? And I said, I don't know. Haven't had a workshop. But my blog is called Imperfect Lady. And when I went to start my blog, I thought, well, I need to know who would my people be. And I said, well, my people that I wanted to talk to were victims of abuse. So I thought, oh, I'm one of the imperfect people is what I thought. I thought, oh boy, this will be fun. I get to be one of the imperfect people. And then when I was writing it down, it said, I am perfect. And I thought, well, how cool, there are no imperfect people. I am perfect. So I am perfect is, we all are perfect depending on where we come from. And I was the perfect representation of a person who was abused. I was a perfect representation of a person who came from a very strict religion. And I was a perfect person becoming aware at 46 of what that meant in my world and how it all came down. And the other part of the workshop is art therapy. And Les and I were just talking about labels. Well, I had labels before I knew who I was, and those labels, I couldn't fit into them anymore. They were of my family, who I at one time thought were different than who they really were. And then there was my church, who I believed in, and then I didn't. So all those labels that I had built myself up to for 46 years, they no longer applied to me. So I'm like, okay, all right, so I'm over here, I don't have any labels, but I do. I have labels of a group that I don't want to belong in at all, because in society, the stigma of sexual abuse is not a label you would want to wear, and certainly not want to wear it on your chest, and certainly not go out in public in it. But we live in a very small community, and the day that it came out in the newspaper who my father was, I had to go work, and it was in a little local gas station. My husband was at the gas station, and a bunch of guys were sitting around, and they said, look at this sicko, and he said, yeah, that's my father-in-law. And so then he comes home and tells me, well, he's in the paper. So then I have to go and say, all right, well, this label, I guess, is my label. And how am I going to wear this label now? I mean, I thought was a good life. I thought I knew who I was. I had done all the right things. I wasn't, I didn't have a whole lot of, but everything that defined who I was gone. And the new things I had to pick up, they weren't fun to pick up, and they weren't fun to work through. And as I wore them, it was really difficult for me to find any way to be in the world that I could recognize me even. So I went down to the basement where I knew that fabric. I didn't really know what I was going to do down there, but at least down there, that fabric didn't judge me. It didn't expect me to be who my past was, and it didn't care who my future was. And so I spent a lot of time with fabric in the basement, and little did I know that that fabric was, and me quilting down there, was showing me who I was. And my first quilt, if you go to the Copper Country Mental Health, they have all my 22 quilts there, and it shows the gauge of who I thought I was, felt I was. I don't know how else to word it, but anyway, the first one, I was like this, and my hair is standing on end. And you could look at it, it's like I'm paralyzed in fear. But when I first created that little lady, she was really tiny on a big background, and I thought, I love you, I love my little lady. I had no clue that this little lady was terrified, didn't know who she was, didn't know where she was going to be going, but I trusted quilting and my journey through there. And as the quilts and years passed, I would be making these quilts, and some of them I'd be like, oh, I can't sell these. These are like, I don't even know if the public would want them. I don't think they're going to get these quilts. So I'd put them in this roll, and before I knew it, I had this 22 quilts. They were all rolled up, and the quilt ladies wanted me to showcase me at a quilt thing, and I said, well, do you want quilts that I sell, or do you want my quilts, I call them? And they said, well, it doesn't really matter. So I went and I hung all these quilts on the line, and then I stepped back and I started looking at those quilts, and I thought, oh my gosh, there is totally a progression here of something. So then I was running around trying to get these quilts in order, Luckily, I had put the date on the bottom of some of them, but you could see again the progression of like this. She was to being a little bit more enthused about life. I have one quilt that she's just writing like big balls of energy. She has no hair. You can't even really tell it's a woman. It's just a being coming out of a box. And I would bring these quilts to our quilt group who had made 4 squares and all those traditional quilts. And I'd lay these quilts down and I'd be like, I love these quilts, I love this, I don't know what this is about. And I think they kind of nodded and were like, nice colors, they'd say, or little bright, or whatever. And so they were very helpful in allowing me to be me and to express myself. Even if they couldn't join me at the level I was in, they allowed me to be there. And as I started to, how I ended up on this circle of being at Michigan Tech doing a workshop is I went to the courthouse to find my father's, the evidence. And I met Tom Rosemurgy. And Tom Rosemurgy sent me on to Angel, who works for Dial Help. And then I did a gala at Michigan Tech for them. And then they sent me, Joe from the Copper Country workshop, he picked me up and said, would you put some quilts up? And now I have 22 there. They passed me on to a Call Me Mental, which is a documentary. What they're trying to do is to destigmatize, I guess they call me mental. A lot of my family calls me mental. I guess what I would consider is I had a breakdown, but the breakdown was into reality. So I don't know if you call it a nervous breakdown. Copper Country, the Call Me Mental is, they're out still trying to, they're continuing on and doing it, and you can look that up and find. And from there, where have I been since then? No, I'm losing my little train.
Explain a little more to people who won't understand what Call Me Mental is.
Well, it's a documentary. It's a documentary to destigmatize mental illnesses, and they're just. I think a lot. We're a lot scared of people or of any kind of a brain. Anyone who thinks differently than you probably is more what it is. And to me, a lot of the mental health, the reason, and people are so, you're afraid to even say anything that's out of the ordinary. And what is really ordinary is what I'd like to know. And especially if it's, a lot of the people with mental illnesses that I found have come through some sort of trauma. And I think if we can destigmatize the mental illness, it'll also help us open up when we have trauma. And what is trauma? It's really a stress to your normal nowadays world, and any one of us can experience trauma at any time. And I think the more people that are out there saying, hey, I had trauma, but I'm still working, I still have 4 children, I'm still a grandma, I can still quilt, I can talk about it out loud, very loud, I can do it on a blog, and it's okay. And there's not one way for anybody to express their trauma. And that's what I think that when I looked up art therapy, and it was the encouragement of free expression. And when you are abused, or if you, mostly when you're abused, and it depends on your age, is you don't have a choice. Because if you had a choice, you certainly wouldn't be getting abused. And so, to me, the art therapy is giving them a choice, giving their choices back, or learning how to make choices again, and even small choices of making choices in color or design. And I think the more that I was able to express myself, even oddly in my group of quilters, the better I was okay being different. And I was different than most of my family. Most of my family chose, I don't know what it is. They're in denial of some sort because their life never changed on it. And so being an artist, which you're labeled differently, you're expressing yourself uniquely. And I think the more we can have people like me out there talking, the easier it is going to be for the next person behind to say, okay, I can do this too. And there's nothing like special about me. I had no special training, and all I knew is, well, oddly enough, I think the universe answers you, and I had said, this will not define me, that I will go forth and find love, peace, and joy. So the universe gave me everything that, showed me everything in my life that was not love, peace, or joy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like how much did I accumulate that was for all the different reasons? So, I'm losing my little train here now. Do any of you have questions about art therapy or the quilts or?
Well, just what you said, I just find that very powerful, what you just said about how the universe exposed things in your life that weren't those things that you were looking for.
Well, it was, but it's showing you what, because you think that I want a life of love. All right, fine. Okay, well, what is this over here? Is this love? No, not really. Or I want to live authentic, is what I said. I want to be truthful. I want to be authentic. All right, let's put you in this situation and I'll be truthful. And it's like, oh, really? With the Daily Mining Gazette? You know, Dial Help wants me to go over there and do that now? Really? You know, I mean, and the thing is, it's really funny in a way and not so funny, but if you do a workshop and it says your voices for sexual abuse, domestic violence on the campus, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, busy, decline, didn't see that one, you know. And it kind of makes you feel, you know, this is the stigma. I'm trying to be tough enough that for the people who don't want to join me as a victim, I got to be okay. I got to be okay whether they're there or not. And again, it's easy for me to go to San Francisco into a room full of strangers. You could put 20,000 in front of me. I got this. Bring you to the copper country. All right, do it. You know all these people. Your children know all these people. Talk about it. And talk about it when half of your family that you're estranged from doesn't even talk to you, you know? So you're making, you know, again, I'm going to stand for the victim. All right, stand for the victim against your mother, against your brother, against your sister. I'm like, well, you know, how many people do I have to stand up against? I mean, I'm a big girl, but how big am I to do this? So the only thing that does encourage me, though, is on the blog or in the different little organizations that I've come across who are helping the victims themselves, whether it's sexual abuse, physical violence, emotional abuse, they're coming to me and saying, you inspire me. And so, you know, if I can inspire one person not to go down the world with those heavy labels. I mean, those labels are on me, but I'm still perfect because of them. That mostly defines who my father was and what he did to me. It wasn't really my definition of me. And so I had to go back and, I mean, I can't get rid of them. They're going to always be with me. But maybe I don't have to wear them in front of me. Well, I kind of am, though. I don't know. I mean, maybe make them, you know, to destigmatize them, to say that it's not a bad thing to have them, that it's okay, and you can still be fine.
It's not a bad thing because you are talking for many of us, which is, you know, I think it was meant. I mean, not meant.
It was meant for the big mouth to get this.
It was meant for somebody who would speak up.
Well, and people have said, you know, something similar to that. And the thing is, I think I looked around to see who are my people? And I said, like, where's a book called The Proper Etiquette of What to Do After You Find Out You Are Abused? I'd like to know where that book is. And, you know, then how do you operate in public? And I would expect, like, a lot of the people that are familiar, but at that time, 10 years ago, I expected the people who knew me, knew my story, would come up to me and pat me on the back and say something. You know, when somebody dies, boom, you're in there. Cakes, you know, everybody's there baking, sending cards, they're right there. I'm in the paper, I'm front page, you know. Nothing. No phone calls, no cards, nobody comes.
But you know, Beth, I put my foot in my mouth shortly after, but I wasn't in the smaller community
That knew that
so
exactly.
I didn't know, and I remember vividly you brought a Christmas package to my house, and I said to you, I'm so sorry to have read what was in the paper. You know, I just can't believe that would come out. You know, I'm Because
Oh.
why I said that? I said that because I knew you. I
Yeah.
couldn't believe anybody in your family
Could do such,
would be unlike you.
right. Well, and the high morals and the high values you just assume are there. But the thing is, what I found out, it's really hard to, someone had said like to shatter the Norman Rockwell picture of a family. I mean, how many people go out there and say the real truth of what's going on in their house? Like the real truth. And I think, again, when you're abused and you're abused at a young age, the brain's literal job is to take something that's so traumatizing and discard it. So you can survive in a home with a pedophile and his wife. Just so you can survive there. It gets rid of it. All right, well, that's really cool. It's gone. However, here I am. I'm afraid of my father, but I don't know why. I don't have nothing. And the people around me aren't saying anything. So, like the one thing is if you know it, you had something like, I had read somewhere where there was a family and it was an uncle who had abused women and he was in jail. But the family just kept talking about him like Uncle so-and-so, like we're not blackballing him. We're not, or don't talk about it. And one of the daughter-in-laws was in a car with someone and said, I cannot believe the way your family's treating him like normal. He's not normal. But who does that? Who does it? I do it, but where am I? I'm far, far from my family. They don't want to hear about it. So, again, you stand against abuse. Well, 90% of the abuse happens with somebody you know. Out of 50% of that is with a family member. So it's either going to be someone that your parents, it's either going to be in your home or somebody your parents know. And who do you tell? Who do you tell? And then who's going to show you an example of that is not a good person? Who's going to show you that? And so to me, that's what I'm trying to say is, so for the people who aren't abused, who are aware, we all need to be talking. I mean, I talk. And sometimes it feels like I'm talking to nobody. But I just want to show an example of what to do when abuse walks in. What do? Do you treat it like a friend still? You can't, and waiting for the courts. Everybody waits for the courts. The courts are going to do it. The courts will do it. They'll take care of it. And I went up to the Holton County Court and I told the deputies, I'm sorry. The hardest job you have is going to be every time with the perpetrator's family. That's going to be your hardest battle to win. And even in my case, my brother, well, half the family, but my father was actually in the courthouse, and one brother who he said that it would be fine as long as my father went to Texas. That he would be okay with that. He didn't want to be the one to send him to jail. He didn't want to be the one to have that on his conscience. And so the families do have a lot of say-so in these cases, but what I was telling, when the detective went around the neighborhood and canvassed the neighborhood where I grew up in, the church that I grew up in, and he came back, he's like, I cannot believe how many people knew and did nothing. Well, after the trial, I mean, my father was, brought up from Texas, was in the Holton County Jail, then he was released to my brother, and then he served a little time before the trial, and then boom, he was out the door to Texas. And so then I write to the lawyers and the judges, all right, guys, now you can join the crew. You couldn't believe how many knew and did nothing. Well, you all just did the same. And so the only way I think we can flip this around is to empower the victims, to, at least what I feel is I've changed the branch of my tree, my limb, I should say, of the tree I came from. I can't change that whole tree, but I can change my limb. And I think if each victim could change their limb, we would slowly start churning away at the numbers. The numbers are huge, and they're just getting huger. Something has to be done differently. And the thing is, they had at this university, they had a gentleman come in, and he spoke about abuse on women. But you know who he was talking to? He was talking to the men. Because why should we be talking to the victims and giving them guidelines on how not to be abused? We're not the ones abusing, and it's not our job. The ones who need to be taught, and it's not so much, what he was saying, it's not so much the guys who are doing the abusing, but the guys who are buddies with the guys doing abusing. And whether they're talking poorly about women, they're, however it is, I mean, and it may start small, but that's where it has to be. It's like, well, where are all the good men? You know, and even in the relationship of my family or in the congregation of my church, where are the men talking? You know, this is abuse on children, most of it, and then of course some of the women are abused as well. But that's where the conversation that I want to talk to is not how to teach victims how not to be abused. I want to teach them when you are abused, you're still perfect, and I want you to be strong. I want you to say it out loud. It's not your problem that this abuse happened. You are going to get flack from your family, but to me, and if I had to be friends with my family, I would have lost every bit of power, esteem, self. I think I would have died. I don't know how, I don't know what I would have looked like. I probably could have been in a home somewhere if I had to try to agree with, to be with. Because it was like, okay, how do you do that? How do you do that? And the thing is, in most criminal cases, you don't really know the perpetrator. You're not related to them, and the people won't expect you to go to their birthday party or Christmas or a wedding or whatever of your abuser. But for this, oh yeah, and you continue to go. And I think, again, the art therapy allows that individual to sit with themselves and start to make choices. And those are probably the first choices they're going to make that go against their religion, their church, their social community. And I know when dictators try to take over a country, the first people they go after are the artists because they're the free thinkers. And so I think the more we can introduce art in the therapy world, I think would be awesome. And maybe you all do. I just didn't go through your therapy. I kind of did my own. We do WIND at and WIND is for the students from Michigan Tech. I said maybe we could have a WIND group at Michigan Tech. WIND is for Women in New Directions, and what I had found because of my of doing my art and being creative in a group of women where there were women up higher than me. They showed me a better example of a mother, a better example of a grandmother, a better example of a friend, because I again didn't have, my role models all fell down and became something I couldn't look to anymore, and I had to come up with new ones. But when you see, and you're in a group of women, you're doing something creative, we don't really talk about any victim things because we know what the negative part is all there. We're pretty familiar with it. But the part we're not familiar with is making healthy choices, making new choices, daring to be different, daring to try something new. And the more you're playing with that stuff, I believe it's going to carry over into the other part of your life, you know. And it's very expressive, whether you want it to be or not. Sadly, it'll all come out. I mean, sadly and goodly, I guess. I mean, I still love that one that was scared stiff, equally as I love the person, you know, that are in the quilts today. Because the one that was scared stiff, I almost like her more because she had nothing to start with. Nothing. There was nothing to start with. But I had 4 children. So how do you just like sit down on the ground and go, oh, well, I'm done now. I don't know what to do here. So I respect her a lot with that nothing, that she continued to create quilts, to create, and then to not only create them, but to share them. And then not only to share them, but the message behind them, which is I had them at Superior National Bank, and she was all excited to have my art, and I said, this is like the first venue that my quilts have actually been in that haven't been associated with the mental health community. And I said, I'm glad to have them exposed, but I'm more excited about people who see them first are like, whoa, and then there's a huge story behind them. And that's the story that I want more people to know about. And someone had asked about the stitch. There's a little orange stitch. It's supposed to be the vocal cords, is what it's supposed to resemble. And there's a group, if you look it up, it's called Speak Your Silence. And so I asked if I could start putting the stitch at the bottom of my quilts. And it is to say that I am open to hear your story. I'm open to hear your truth, and I'm open to share mine. And it's kind of a code, if you will, that's I hope will start growing, that we'll see more and more people. I mean, they're wearing them on caps and on their shoes. And it's, like I said, it's called The Stitch, Speak Your Silence. And it was one of the women on that group had said, you think your world is going to end, and when you go out and share your story, to have everybody know your darkest secrets, it's going to be the worst. And it actually becomes the most freeing thing you'll ever do. I mean, really, what can I possibly do that will be more embarrassing? I mean, I'm not quite sure there is anything than to reveal the things that most people keep a secret. So, any more questions? Remarks? Anything that anyone wants to add?
When you put the information about the stitch on your blog, I just thought it was wonderful that the proceeds from buying those kits is used for counseling services for people.
Yeah, you have to pay like $5 for this little box. Michelle has one. And all the proceeds do go to, they help, because a lot of people can't afford counseling. You may be able to get services in your town and perhaps not, but it all goes to counseling for people who are breaking their silence. So yeah, and I think too, again, the campus could do this maybe for next year, and to buy the group, buy those stitches and just leave them like random things. So I don't know, I suppose people don't want to be known that they're taking the stitch, but I mean, imagine if you have a stitch or you're looking for a stitch and you see it in a classroom, at a sporting event or somewhere, you know. Again, I'm not wearing the stitch, but it's pretty much right across my forehead anyway. It's like, oh, I know you. Oh, really? So how do you know me? The most popular victim in our town?
Survivor.
Beth, you use that. I'm sorry.
I was going to say most popular survivor.
Right.
Well, you use that word victim, and every time you say it, I'm like, I get confused from it.
Well,
because not once have I ever seen you in this life as a victim.
right, but I still am one. I still am one.
As you're so strong and empowering and free thinking.
Right.
And
But it would it?
helping everybody.
I still have to
So-
use it because you understand why though? Because for other victims to see that I'm a victim. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I hope I'm not acting like a victim anymore.
No.
But I totally was a victim, and then
No,
it
but
totally
that's
switched my world around.
That's what, it was kind of like a slap to me. I'm like, oh yeah, like I
Yeah.
know the story.
Well, and here's
Well,
another.
you think about
But-
about where Beth was like 10 years ago, and how where you
Yeah.
are now from
From 10 years.
even in the time that I've known you, it's like your story is so rich and strong and powerful, and I appreciate the fact that you're willing to continue to share it and share it and share it, because I think it's so important for people to hear.
I know, and that's why I keep doing it, because if I would sit back if somebody else would step forward, but I'm not in competition with anybody
Right.
yet. But the other thing that what they were saying about victims and surviving, which is survival is a good thing, but how about I experienced sexual abuse? I've experienced it, just like people have experienced cancer, or they've experienced a car accident or a death. You experience it, but it's not who you are. You know what I mean? And the thing is, I still have to say that because of the stigma of victims and abuse, I still have to use the word victim. I don't know how else would I get my message across if I took out the victim, and if I took out the abuse, because that's what the majority of people are doing, is they're taking it out and they're trying to still live their life, but don't talk about it. But don't talk about it it keeps interfering in your life anyway. And I don't think it interferes with me. I think I still have like they call them triggers, traumatic things. I still will react that way. But now I know what I'm doing. I'm like, okay, I know what this is. I know what this is. I'm really close here. I'm really out of control here. I don't know what I'm doing here. I feel powerless here. But I can look at that and, you know, and start, okay, this is me. This is the event. This is really close to where you are. You can, you know, talk my way back out of it and not be, you know, like the person I was for the 46 years that I didn't know I was abused. I'd go off like a rocket ship with rage at something that I didn't need to be hollering to. But I found out from Alice Miller, who's a therapist in England, who wrote a book, The Body Never Lies. She said you need to look to where the abuse came from, to look to your parents. And you know, if you're not looking there and acknowledging it, hollering at it, getting your rage out, your frustrations, whatever that is to it, it goes down to the next generation. And my children will vouch that it went, this is my daughter, Georgia, will vouch that it went down to that next generation. And those are my teachers. I mean, here, now you gotta do, okay, now you're effed up. You're a mental case. Your mind is totally bonkers. You got 4 kids now. So how are you gonna change? How are you gonna do this? You're not allowed to scream anymore. You're not allowed to do that anymore. So how do you renegotiate your world? And Georgianne was the one that said, we got a new mother without having a divorce. So I had to change everything that and gratefully so, but I didn't know I was going to be able to do it. But I did everything almost the opposite of what my mother did. She ran, and I'm like, oh my God, would I love to run. New town, give me a new town where nobody knows me. I could be good, I'll be strong, I can do everything. No, you get to go to the hockey game with your son and see all these people that turn away from you. Keep going, you get to keep going to those hockey games, and nobody's gonna talk about it, but you keep going. And you can't go like this, you have to go like this. I mean, and my husband would be like, you're shaking like a rabbit. Well, yeah, I am. I don't have no labels. I don't know who I am. I know who the enemies are, and I got to be with them. I don't know how to do it out here. I don't know how to be this. But I had to keep, you know, and the more you do it, the more you do it, the more you do it. And you become stronger and stronger. And then you realize, oh yeah, that's them. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to do. So here I am. I don't even know how to do a workshop. But they said, here's what the thing is, like the lady on the quilts, which is me and my self-esteem, and the victim, who I want all the victims to grow into, to be strong, to make choices, to speak out loud, you know, just to do what they're going to do. When somebody asks, Autumn, just on Facebook, messaged me, would you come and do a workshop? And I'm like, oh, like about what, you know? And I think she said art therapy or something. I'm like, all right, it's those quilts. I gotta say yes. Yep, I'll be there. I'm like, I don't know how to do a workshop, but here we are. So, and all I do is I come and I show you me, I guess, me and my quilts, and in hopes that if it's not you, but it's somebody you know, send them my way if you have to. Send them to the blog, send them to Dial Help, Copper Country Mental Health. Like when I brought my quilts there, I mean, there's a stigma in our community. You're gonna go to the mental health place? I mean, oh my God, let's put on whatever. You don't want anyone to see you got mental problems, and certainly not if you're a school board member. You're not gonna go to the mental health place, you know? But again, this was a few years after when I brought my quilts, and the people were so nice. I said, I wish I would have came. You know, when you're down into nobody, it would have been nice to have somebody saying, it's okay. We'll help you through this. And I don't know if everybody can get those free services or what the deal is, but you know, therapy, or go to WIN, go to art. There's some of the. I went to see a doctor twice in Marquette because I didn't want to go be seen up here. And I told her, my family kept saying I was certifiably mental, I was insane, I was nuts, I had lost it, I was completely gone. And I thought, well, I don't know I've never been here before, so that could very well be true. So I went there and I said, tell me. I said, here's the deal, this is what happened, this is what I'm doing. Now I need you to be totally honest with me. Where am I? Am I mental? You know, am I nuts? Do you need to do something to me? Where am I here? And she said, you really don't need me to say that, but you're fine. Most of the therapies are trying to get you to reality, trying to get you to make, make your own choices, make powerful choices. There was something to that. I lost my train as I was telling you.
Did you have any relapses of going backward from your progression moving forward in your?
You know what? I think I was too scared to go back.
I mean, where it was too hard.
No, I was too scared to go back.
Okay.
I mean, as hard as it was to do the things I had to do going forward, it would have been terrifying to lose any momentum that I had. And the thing is, the smallest things that you think, oh, come on, it's a graduation party. Get your butt over there. What's the big deal? Nope. No. It's like your mentality is like a fragment of an inch away from totally losing it. Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor was a neuroscientist who had a stroke on her left brain, and I was emailing her. She wrote a book called My Stroke of Insight, and the left part of the brain is the one that labels everything and gets everything in order for you. And what I felt what happened when I was 46 is I had a stroke on my left side. All my definitions, there wasn't anything I could have picked up to make sense out of. They didn't make sense anymore, so I slid over to the right. And even now, I mean, I can do a verbal thing, but I could never read to you, like write it down and then deliver something to you. I can talk, obviously, for quite a while. But I couldn't, that left brain is, she said it takes the least amount of information and weaves the most plausible story. And so I just didn't, I was, I guess, too afraid again to go backwards. I couldn't, I don't even know if I had the option. It's like if you took a ball of twine and stirred it all up and then threw baubles into it and all kinds of garbage stuff, that's what it looked like. You have to start sorting through piece by piece to see, okay, is this still reasonable? Do I still believe this? How do I feel about this? Do I still, and most of it, when the body never lies, since my body was terrified of my father, I knew this didn't lie, but I was making up stories over here. So no matter what thing I had to confront, I'd say, I wrote, I journaled too before I blogged. I wrote, walked in nature, and then did that. But I would write it out. When in doubt, I would write it out. Like, who's going to benefit from me going? What is this going to do to me personally? How do you feel about it? And I'd be terrified of the thought of going backwards into that dysfunctional family compared to, and it wasn't very kind to be over here either, because the siblings weren't very kind to me over here either. But I felt strong enough that at least my daughters and my son would have an example of what to do. Whether they follow it or not, at least they got two options now, where I didn't have that other option. But however, ironically, I mean, before Facebook and texting and everything, I mean, the technology today is really cool, because my mother had two sisters. She came from a family of 12. I came from a family of 14. She had two sisters that we never met. One lived in the town where we always had family reunions, but she never came. Another sister left and never came, she died in California, I believe. Those are the two people I'd like to be in touch with. I mean, they're past. But so I also thought, well, I'm going to be the voice for the generations behind me, even if it's not my own family, but the other, relatives, to see what happened in, this is what happened in our family. This is in our family. And this is the story, I guess. Because my mother was abused. Her brothers abused my brothers. I mean, so it's just layers upon layers of it. But yet, there's nobody talking about it. It would be a Rockwell family if you didn't know what was going on. And so to backslide would be to backslide back to where I was, and I wasn't going to do it.
Do you have knowledge that your father abused anyone else?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I went to the courthouse to get the box of, I wanted to look at the evidence. I did not go to the trial. I was not it was a no shape. I didn't want to see him, number one, but I was so precariously balanced. I don't know what it would have done to me. So, and it took a long time. I knew that box was sitting up there in Holton. I kept thinking, come on, you're big enough. You can do it. You can do it. But I think it was 5 years maybe. And then I went up there and they gave me these papers about the court, but they also gave me, there was victim statements because now it's public. And I believe at the time there were 8 or 9, but that's just too slow. I know there's more. I mean, they say typically it's about 100, I believe.
That's more than that.
Yeah, and I believe it. And then, like, it doesn't happen during the day, and they got all these little rules when we all know that that's not true. And I don't even know if that's, again, the problem. I mean, I don't even have an answer to the problem of how this can end. I do know by the biggest deterrent is victims speaking up. And just not, and to say that it's not about, this isn't my problem. This isn't, I'm not the one who's, so I mean, the more that they speak up, I mean, imagine the climate of, and how perfect for a pedophile to be in a home where nobody says anything. I mean, how cool is this? It's perfect. You'd imagine a home with one that doesn't. What kind of an environment is that going to be on that guy? To have the neighbors come in, have the church members come in and say, no, Just say, and the thing is, here's the other, all these people knew and did nothing. When I heard a name from the church, hey, Tom Roseberg, he got another name for you. Whether he can do anything or not, I am not going to be the one who knows and does nothing. If you can't, and the way my father was exposed is somebody talked to the Family Independent Agency, concerned about the children, and they took it from there. You don't have to confront the abuser yourself, and you're not going to be taking on the whole thing. There's people in place that can help. But my thing is just to empower the victims. Hey, hi Sarah. So again, any more questions, comments?
Was there anyone in your family that sided with you at all? I mean,
I do have one brother.
One brother, okay. And no one else came forward?
They actually did come forward, saying that yes, it did happen. Yes, she's mental to my mother. Yes, he's got a problem. But family sticks together no matter what. And they believe in the forgiveness, forgive and forget. So yeah, but I think that too is almost another level of denial that they don't. I mean, to me, if your actions don't show it, it's meaningless.
I have a friend who, a preacher, molested her, and even in her explanation of what happened, it was like, well, he was her mother's friend after her father died. He was a comforter, he was generous, he did this and this and this and this, so, that pulled it way off.
Yeah.
That little bit of what happened to her.
Right.
Well,
and I think that's the case for, even for, my mother said, he clothed and fed 14 children, he was a hardworking man. Well, none of that affected my self-esteem. None of that affected, those parts didn't affect me. But the huge part that they don't talk about is what's creating all the traumatized people in the communities. Hurt people.
yeah, and that is not a Christian way to be. If you're going to use Christianity or any, using Christ or God or, compassion or even forgiveness, you have to ask forgiveness of what you've done.
Well, the thing is, I don't think, it's not anywhere that I know that forgiveness cures pedophilia.
Right.
And I think, as long as they're on that, there's religion is for your spirit per se, but it's not going to be helpful for abuse issues. I just don't believe it myself. I mean,
but I'm saying they would have to come forward and say they did.
Yeah, but
and they don't.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. Again, I think the more families that stand up, you know, that can show an example, and like I said, I maybe 100 years before this, you know, I don't know what it's, you know, who am I inspiring to stand up? Because I am showing you, if you stand up, you're estranged. Because the society isn't embracing this. Society means family to family to family. That's who creates our society. And so if there's, you know, what is it, 1 in 4, 1 in 3, look in this room, you know. So I don't know what the answers are. I just know that I'm going to do different than my mother did, which was she was silent about it.
And
So,
she knew.
and she knew. Yeah, she knew.
Well, the other
It'd be nice if she didn't know, but.
The other thing that's happened, I think I talked to you about this when I was growing up. We had an addition put on the house, and the whole while we were having that addition put on the house, my mother was like a cat on a hot tin roof the entire time. I mean, she just had us like chicks. And she didn't tell me until many, many, many years later that one of the guys that was on that work crew was a known pedophile. And at that time, in that small town situation, people like her, they just protected their own a little harder. You know, you didn't go to the police, you just protected your own. That was what you did.
Well, and that's where I think the stigma, and that's what a lot of us have been taught. That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to teach a new way. And it doesn't appear to be very popular because you are going to go against your family in order to get this new way, you know. I just don't see, if I saw another way, if there would have been another way in the past 10 years for me to navigate within my family and make changes, I would have done it. But there's no way you can say you're standing for the child and standing against abuse if you're having Sunday dinner with a mother who knew, with a brother who paid the defense fees, with a brother who sent him on his way, to sisters who took him into his home. How am I going to do this? Who's going to believe me that I'm standing against victims if I'm having Sunday dinner with all the people? I can't do it. I can't do it. I've got to draw the line, and that's the line. But the thing is, it's not like you end up with no family. You end up with your own family. You end up with your own self. You're connected with a stronger, you know, and are they really family? Can you call that family? You know, can you call that love? Can you call that protection? Can you call that nurturing? If they're participating in this thing, you know? And the thing is, again, I come from 14, most of them married, most of them had kids, they're still gathering. You know, so my father's dead, but there's other, you know, he abused many, they were abused by brothers, uncles. Oh my gosh, there's no way a child can go through that family in their celebrations and not get nailed. There is just no way it's going to happen. None. And I said, well, here's the good thing. I know what to do with victims. Send them my way then. I don't know. I can't get them to stop meeting. So it's a real, and I don't see any family members here. They worked at the gala. They're not at the Take Back the Night. They don't come to Copper Country Mental Health. I don't know. You know, so again, my thing is to have, the more people that stand like me, or if you even, maybe if you're not standing, but you see somebody else standing, you know, give them a little cheer, send them a card, give them a phone call and say, go for it. Good for you. Instead, I got one phone call, I lied. I got one phone call. And it said, remember, there's no sin too great to forgive. And I said, F you. And I never swore before. I never swore before this. I never did. But I said, there's no way that swear word and what this man did is equal. And you can't, like, forgive this. I'm sorry. I don't know, call me mental. But I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Goodbye now. Any more questions? Well, what we do have, Autumn had said to do a project. And it's kind of hard to do a project in a half hour. We do have WIND, and we're talking about Women in New Directions. We usually meet at your crazy place, that's where I was going with that. I went from Marquette.
Perfect.
When I went to Marquette, she said, be careful about support groups you get into. You might all be sitting in the boat at the same level, and nobody may be interested in getting hired. WIN is interested in you getting higher and in you moving in new directions. So that's what's a good thing from Marquette. So WIN meets, Dial Help would know. On Facebook you can friend, I think you can friend it or whatever you do to WIN on Facebook.
You can like it.
Like it, like the Facebook thing. I'm in the technology without the words, I can do this. So anyway, Autumn had said for us to do a project, and I said, cool, it's just like WIN, but we don't have enough time. But what we do have, they're called weathergrams. Autumn forgot the paperwork, and I handed it to her before I read the whole thing. You're supposed to, these weathergrams are supposed to go out in the beginning of, just like equinox, solstice, these things. Anyway, for 6 months in the weather. And the first letter is supposed to be written in red, and then the rest can be whatever. And they're supposed to be just out in the wind, in the universe. And I think you could either put on something you're grateful for, an intention, a desire, something that you want to see change, whether it's within you, within the community, what you hope for, what you wish for. And then you can hang that somewhere in 6 months, go back and pick it up and see if you've been even focused and seen things on that weathergram. The other thing I wanted to ask, since this is a imperfect workshop, how many here are perfect? Georgianne Cobb. I just told you people there's no such thing as imperfection, so I didn't do my workshop very well. Because everybody is a perfect representation of where they are, where they've been, and I couldn't, you do better when you know better, and you keep growing, and you keep challenging yourself to go do a workshop, to speak up, to do art, to do whatever, but you can't judge yourself on something that you're not right now. But everything that I am not ashamed of anything that I've done. I have no regrets. Even being a mother for 46 years, living in denial of abuse and doing a really bad job, I couldn't have done any better. How could a person who was abused, who had no self-esteem, who was filled with rage, who didn't trust her family but didn't know and all this, how could she have done any better? I didn't have no tools. I had no role models. I did the best I could at that time. And I walked down the road one day and I said goodbye to that lady. And you know, thank you for serving me, for having no memory, for getting me to 46 years, for being with that family and protecting me there. But I totally don't need you no more. We're going to go on in reality. And I am perfect. I mean, I'm a perfect representation, again, of being abused. And then a perfect representation of what a victim looks like speaking out, because we don't have any role models for this either. I can't say, oh yeah, do you know so-and-so? Remember how she all did it? Oh well, this is how we're going to do it. You do it your way. There's no, and it's all perfect. So now some of you's past the perfect.
Tell me what's going to happen to this skin.
You're going to put that, put something on there. What I was going to say, why I came back to the perfect thing is, if you don't think you're perfect, write down what would make you perfect, hang it in a tree. Go visit that in 6 months and see if you're there. But again, I would say there's no such thing as imperfections, so if that's what, I don't know, try to get to understand that you are perfect just the way you are. In fact, it's impossible not to be you.